Okay, so welcome all of you to the audited financial presentation for 2017. We welcome you. It's always a pleasure to see that people are interested in Galaxy. I personally get concerned when I see people and I say, "Are you going to attend a meeting?" and they say no, because having people attend these meetings and participating in all these activities is critical, so that we can get input on your concerns. So I encourage everyone to talk to their neighbors and friends to come to these meetings. They're very important. Okay, my name is Richard Vasquez. I'm President of the Board of Directors. Can the Board of Directors please stand? These are my colleagues. We work together. We're trying to get a lot of issues resolved. And after the presentation, there will be a Q&A, and we hope that that we're successful in answering all your questions. So, with that being said, why don't I introduce the members? Why don't the members of the board introduce themselves? Wade Wesson, Tower 3.
Primer, Tower 3.
Soheila Kobler, Tower 2.
Michael Baru, Tower 3.
Richard Miller, Tower 1.
Nancy Kakuza, Tower 1.
Michael Cricco, Tower 2.
Joe Purcell, Tower 1.
Okay, thank you. And of course, our general manager is here.
Good evening, Dorothy Wozniak.
Okay, with that being said, we'll start the meeting. I'll be handing the microphone over to Joe Purcell, our treasurer.
Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Tonight's meeting will be focusing on the 2017 audited financials. This year, we tried to do things a little bit different and requested, homeowners that were reviewing the financials to submit questions prior to the meeting, just so we can get a pulse of the community on what you're interested in. And we did our best to incorporate those answers into the presentation tonight. If you feel that your answers weren't clear in the Q&A session of tonight, feel free to come up and ask for clarifications or if additional questions come up after tonight while we're going through the presentation. Feel free. I just want to walk through tonight's agenda. We can go to the next slide. So tonight's agenda, I'll have some introductions so you understand who's here presenting to you tonight. We're going to have the external audit team walk through the 2017 audited financials. And based on the homeowner questions, we noticed some themes that, the main questions were around the bad debt, the allowance for doubtful accounts, and specific R&R topics. So first, we're going to have the external auditors walk you through your financials. Then Masha and I from the internal accounting team are going to walk through a couple of deeper dives into your bad debt, your allowance for doubtful accounts, and specific R&R topics. At that point, we'll have homeowner questions, and then after this meeting, we're going to move into the May open session. So anybody that's interested in that, we hope you'll stick around to see the business that we're taking care of this month. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic around. I'm Joe Purcell. I'm board member as well as treasurer of the board. I'm going to pass the mic around so that the presenters tonight can introduce themselves.
Thanks, Joe. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike McGee, and I'm an audit partner and partner in charge of quality control at the CPA firm GTCA. We are the external accountants and auditors for Galaxy.
I'm Ryan Regan. I serve at GTCA. I was in charge this year on the audit.
Also joining, not to interrupt you, Joe, but also joining Ryan and I are Nick Albert and Catherine Medina. They're staff accountants on the engagement team as well.
Good evening, Joe Cipolla with the accounting team, CPA.
My name is Masha Bai. I work here at the GTCA Internal Accounting Department.
And with that, we'll move on to the presentation by the external auditors walking you through the 2017 audited financial statements.
Thank you, Joe. Once again, good evening, everyone, and my name is Mike McGee. I'm the second engagement partner on the Galaxy account. Neil Delator, who's our lead engagement partner, on the account had his daughter's college graduation this evening, so unfortunately he's not able to be with us. What I'd like to do first is provide everyone with a walkthrough of our audit opinion. As our opinion indicates, we've audited the Galaxy financial statements, which comprise the balance sheet as of December 31, 2017, the related statements of revenues and expenses, and changes in fund balances and cash flows for the year then ended, December 31, 2017, as well as the related footnote disclosures to the financial statements. As our opinion indicates, we opine on management's financial statements. Management is ultimately responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with U.S. generally accepted accounting principles, otherwise known as U.S. GAAP. Just to provide you with a brief overview of what U.S. GAAP financial reporting requires. What U.S. GAAP requires is that revenue to be recognized and reported when earned rather than when the cash is received, and for expenses to be recognized when incurred rather than when the cash is actually dispersed. Accordingly, as of the balance sheet date, there are receivables and payables related to the revenue and expenses that had been earned and or incurred but not yet received and paid as of that date. Our responsibility as the independent auditors is to express an opinion on your financial statements based on our audit, which is conducted, of course, in accordance with professional standards, U.S. generally accepted auditing standards. Those standards require that we plan to perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are free from material misstatement. And what an audit involves is performing procedures to obtain audit evidence about the amounts and disclosures in the financial statements. These audit procedures include direct audit confirmation with third parties, for example, banks, review of supporting documentation for appropriate authorization and expense categorization, review of contracts, review of payroll information. We compare revenues to budget and verify that the computations are in accordance with the Galaxy bylaws. Also, in performing our audit, we consider internal controls relevant to the association's preparation and fair presentation of financial statements in order to design our appropriate audit procedures, but not for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of those internal controls. As everyone knows, financial statements are now prepared and reviewed by the board on a monthly basis, and the board is very active in the oversight of the financial reporting and accounting. Ultimately, we believe that the audit evidence that we've obtained as part of performing the audit is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our unqualified audit opinion, which in the audit world is the best opinion that you could get or receive from an independent auditor. Jumping to page 12 of the financial statements, what U.S. GAAP requires is that supplementary information on future major repairs and replacements supplement the financial statements. This concept of funding future repairs and replacements is a GAAP disclosure that is unique to condominium associations. This supplementary information, as I just mentioned, is included on page 12 of the financial statements. As you may know, the board has been primarily commissioned to maintain the common areas of the property. Part of that responsibility is to make sure that the future repairs and replacements related to the common areas of the property are properly identified and to ensure that funds are accumulated for future major repairs and replacements. This is performed through a study in which all the components of the common areas of the property are identified and estimated remaining useful lives, and funding requirements are determined. Again, this is required for common interest realty associations such as a condominium association. At December 31, 2017, there's approximately $3.8 million in funds appropriated for future major repairs and replacements, whereas estimated 2018 funding requirements have been estimated to be approximately $3 million. Accordingly, as you can see, the funding appears to be adequate to meet future needs for the current 2018 year. Jumping to the next page, Nick, with respect to the other supplementary information which accompany the financial statements on pages 12 through 17, we made certain inquiries of management and evaluated the form, content, and methods of preparing the information to determine that the information complies with U.S. GAAP. We compared and reconciled the supplementary information to the underlying accounting records used to prepare the financial statements. U.S. GAAP requires the disclosure of commitments and contingencies. And within Note 5 to the financial statements provides this disclosure, and as disclosed, as of our audit opinion date, the litigation matters have been narrowed down to mediation. We did meet with the board last week, and the board, I believe Joe will have a further update regarding this. From a tax standpoint, the association is required to allocate income and expenses on a reasonable basis between membership and non-membership activities. The association only pays tax on non-membership activities. The association has paid estimated tax payments in excess of the tax liability due, and accordingly should be receiving a refund in the future. This is reported and disclosed in the financial statements. Nick, if you could jump to the statement of cash flows, please. We do understand that there are some questions pertaining to the statement of cash flows. One of the questions pertains to, there's an interfund line item of approximately $343,000. And this line item in the cash flow statement is for financial statement presentation purposes only. The fund balances are maintained on an accrual basis of accounting and not a cash basis. This causes this difference, which is trued up on the statement of cash flows to reflect the respective funds' cash balance changes. This is consistent with prior year's financial statement presentation and is in accordance with U.S. GAAP. The starting point for the statement of cash flows is the accrual basis, excess or deficiency of revenues over expenses. Essentially the P&L for both the operating fund and the replacement fund. And then there are adjustments to reconcile this excess deficiency of revenues over expenses to net cash provided or used by operating activities, which include the year-to-year change in select assets and liabilities on the balance sheet. The cash balances reported on the balance sheet as of December 31, 2017 report the reconciled account balances in the bank, deposit, and investment accounts. It has been brought to our attention by the board that in the very near future, all cash held in bank deposit and investment accounts will be fully insured. PPAC Gladstone Bank provides sweep accounts, which enables all of the funds of Galaxy to be FDIC insured. In terms of our required communication under our professional standards, we're pleased to report that we encountered no difficulties in performing and completing our audit. The cooperation of the Galaxy accounting team, which includes Cipolla and Company, was excellent, and a key factor in our assessing the environmental internal controls as strong here at Galaxy. For purposes of our required communications under professional standards, a disagreement with management is defined as a financial accounting, reporting, or auditing matter, whether or not resolved to our satisfaction, that could be significant to the financial statements or the auditor's report. We're pleased to report that no such disagreements arose during the course of our audit. There are no other findings or issues that are, in our professional judgment, significant and relevant to be reported. What I'd like to do now is turn the presentation over to Ryan Regan, who is a CPA and in charge of the account, to provide you with a brief recap of some of the highlights of the financial statements.
Thank you, Mike. To start off, I would like to say that revenue, as you all know, is a function of the annual budget and determined by the board. Revenue for the year ended December 31, 2017 was sufficient to cover operating expenses for the year, and accordingly, it is under our understanding that there will be no special assessment required in the next year. Yes.
Can you call out the page number?
Next page, it should be page 13.
Thanks.
So if you look at the bottom line, total revenue at the bottom, revenue was right on budget with a variance of $56,016, which is approximately less than 0.4%, which is very, very accurate. Now if you would flip to page 17 now. On page 17, what is going to be displayed is the total operating expenses for the year ended December 31, 2017, which again was right in line with budget, with approximately a 3% favorable, which means budget higher than actual variance. So at the end of the day, expenses were below what was incurred. Total operating expenses for the year ended December 31, 2017 were approximately $12.5 million, which again were right aligned with budget. This total is comprised of three major components. One piece being contractual expenditures, which were approximately $4 million, or roughly 32%. Maintenance operating expenses, which were approximately $1.8 million, which comes to a total of 14%. And lastly, there were utilities, which were approximately $3.6 million, or 29%. Another key point to note that as of December 31st, 2017, the association did not have any outstanding bank debt. Lastly, if you could flip to the balance sheet, Nick. I don't have page number. Which is in page, I believe, 4. If I remember correctly. So there is currently a union pension liability reported on the balance sheet in 2 places.
I'm sorry, Ryan, that was page 3.
Yes. Yes, sir. Sorry. As I was saying, there is currently a union pension liability reported on the balance sheet, which is separated into 2 sections: the current piece and the long-term piece. This was derived when the association decertified from the union. There's a statutory calculation requiring the funding to be paid over time. Year over year, this amount is being amortized and the amount is being reduced on a yearly basis. That is all we have to say. Thank you. We'd be happy to address any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions? Anybody has any questions? Elena?
Could you explain your comment about the union, the Galaxy decertifying from the union?
We were told in the past that the union took off with the pension and that the government said we had to pay it back. So why are we being told we decertified?
I don't know. The question is?
You need me to repeat?
Yes, please.
Okay, in the past, we were told that the union stole our employees' pension. Today, you're telling us the Galaxy decertified from the union. That's a different story than we were told in the past, so could you explain?
There's a union liability. So she's asking, there seems to be a difference between the way you're reporting it now and the way it's been reported in the past.
It's been consistent. I believe back in 2006, this transpired back in 2006, and the financial statement presentation, the establishment of that liability at that point in time and the expense pertaining to it would have been reported back in 2006. And then, year over year, the payments would have been basically reduced, the ultimate amount to.
It's just communicated.
Yeah, I'm not understanding, telling us we decertified.
The communication about the expense is different this year.
Yeah, you're
That-
an
if I-
accountant.
Unless I misunderstood.
Right, you're right.
Why are you saying it's decertified? What made you use that language?
Excuse me. Whenever somebody's going to talk, please let me know so I can take a mic.
There was no decertification. It was 2006, and Elaine is correct that the union went bust, and we have to pay back into a fund. That's what it is. So I'm just wondering, are you just assuming the word decertification?
It may have been an incorrect use of the word.
It's being reported the same way as.
Right. There's been no change in how it's being accounted for and being reported. May have just been an incorrect use of a word. So apologies for the confusion there.
What actually happened was that the union officers stole the money from the union. When the employees learned of this, or when they found out they weren't being properly represented by the union, they changed unions. That's what triggered the event where we got stuck under federal law. The Tax Reform Act of '86 said that the employer had to make up the funds. So because a few people stole the money, the Galaxy had to make up almost $2 million worth of the funds, which we are paying quarterly over, I think it's 20 years, I'm not sure.
That's correct, Steve, but one additional thing, we don't have to pay into any other pension funds until this $2 million is paid off. So we don't have to pay to two different.
Okay, next question.
Hi, I didn't get your name, so I'll speak to both of you. I will myself with the gentleman next to you. I'm looking at page 14. On 14, we have the accounting department outsourcing. The budget was $587,871. The actual was $481,900. The difference is $105,471 extra left over. I know the budgets are due, and they're confirmed in meetings at the end of November. The contract that went into effect with accounting took place that December, I believe, or a few days later. I want to know why we were budgeted more than the contract, which you guys had to know because you were negotiating and you signed it.
I can answer that. Yeah, I mean, you've been on the board. Nothing's a guarantee in this world until the board votes on it. You need 5 votes for every effort, and this was a 5-year contract proposal. There was not certainty that that was going to go through, and if it didn't go through, the original contract would have ran through. So for budgeting purposes, and we're not. I mean, we can tweak the budget until the last minute, but until that vote goes through, and it was brought up to the board that that was going to be the stance, that we were going to include the original contract unless the board would approve it by.
Okay, and I get that. If you had to vote in it officially 30 days later, you never know what's going to happen. But being the dates were so close in proximity, that's $105,000 that we paid out of our pockets. Why wasn't this so soon to the passing of the budget revisited and revised?
I mean, last time I revised the budget, it was a major uproar, to be completely honest, in the Galaxy for $105,000. We run, things go over, things go under, there's puts and takes. Since I've been on the board, I have never managed each individual line item. I manage to an overall budget. There's going to be puts and takes in every line item. It's what I've done through my career. There's no line that you're going to manage exact unless it's a contractual commitment. And in this instance, the contractual commitment at the time of the budget was the original contract with this firm of Cipolla. When you're asking a board to commit, well, then I'm not exactly sure what you're trying to have.
I asked why it wasn't revisited and revised, and you said so. But
okay.
why did you take that out of my hand when Steve
Because
spoke
everybody
at
here has
the
one question. I'm not going to argue the point. Any more questions? Any more questions? Okay. Just to let you know, the overall budgetary performance was excellent. We're within a couple of points of meeting our targets. And just to respond to you, Gail, there is a lot of movement in the budget on a line item basis, and especially over here. One of the problems I see is that the facility is very old, and there's a lot of things that happen here that are just impossible to measure. For example, we get leaks here sometimes that take place, and you think it's going to be one apartment. All of a sudden, you have 4 or 5 apartments affected, and now that's going to be an extra cost. So what we'll try to do is develop efficiencies in another area, to maintain the budget. But overall, when you see the budget performance over time, and you can see it in the numbers, you can see that the overall budgetary performance was excellent. Yes. Wait.
I just wanted to make one real quick. There are many items in the budget that float, and it is a living document. So we project and forecast, and the fact that the size of our budget this year, we're 0.4% within budget, they're doing their due diligence, and the accounting is staying on top of it. And things do float, and things do change, and contracts don't always land where you forecast.
And sometimes there are efficiencies that we gain doing internal controls. But yes, I'll get this to you again.
Okay, if we go to page 15, so I had a quick question, but I'll do it after this. The electricity, the budget was $2,400,000. The actual was $2,140,000. That is, and the gas was budgeted $370, and it was $345,259. Having been on the board, I do understand when we prepare budgets for gas and electricity, we look at long forecasting for weather through almanacs, through brokers, et cetera, et cetera. And I know the weather conditions for 17 were forecasted to be pretty much the same as 16. One of my questions is that in December of 2016, the budget was 2.8, we used 2.3. So we were 500,000 over budget, taking into consideration two variables that the forecasting, I assume, was researched. I don't know. You can tell us. But you also signed a contract which was going into effect, I think, that month after the budget, lowering our energy, thank you, I think to 7.2%. What I'm getting at is what I'm seeing here prevalent in all of these pages, and I have one or two on each page, especially electricity, knowing you were doing the new lighting, which is a science. When the new lighting and kilowatt hours are reduced because of the LED lighting or whatever Dorothy did and the board did, which was great, that's a science. That's actual numbers. You know how much we spend each kilowatt hour every year. That goes into the budget, Joe, and you know it's a science, and so we could predict. So taking into consideration, we underwent $500,000 budget last year, so that was in your cushion. The forecast was the same. Additionally, you got a better contract, and you could have done the numbers to forecast the reduction. I think it was about 30 or 70,000. Again, I mixed up my numbers. Don't make fun of me going on and on, Joe. That's not nice.
Trying to understand your question.
All right, so it's slow, so I think you can. I delved into the numbers. We have 283,000 in the 2017 numbers. I'm looking at a loan which was over. Yeah, my point is that the gentleman who said before that expenses were below, and we didn't need an actual assessment. What I'm seeing here, let me get to the point.
Please get to the point.
I am. Don't interrupt, please. What I'm seeing is padding. It seems like you're pre-assessing us, so you don't have to assess us, because there are so many cushions and so much over budgeting.
Okay, everybody in the room gets
That was my
point.
point.
We over-assessed on the energy. Is that correct?
It seems the energy.
Did we over-assess on the energy in Gail Hoffman's opinion? Please.
Go ahead, Joe.
What do you think is speaking to in such a nasty manner?
Dude,
I
you're
said
so
yes,
nasty.
the numbers
You're so
prove that
friendly.
we were over-assessed.
Okay, yeah.
Through the
Joe.
presentation, I have been told that the residential assessment had been increased. If you look at your maintenance bill between 2017 and 2018, the energy budget has been reduced by 7.4% year over year. This board has worked with outside consultants to do the best they can to get energy contracts.
Gail, please. We're being disrespectful towards the entire audience. Gail, if you want an opportunity to talk, you've been given it. Please respect the audience.
I am.
Go ahead, Joe.
So year over year, we've reduced the energy 7.4% going into 18. I'm more than happy to admit that in 2017, there was a surplus in energy. I see a surplus in anything as a good thing because, as I said earlier, I managed to a budget. There's a ton of problems at the Galaxy. There's flooding in apartments, there's plumbing issues, there's electricity issues. When we have savings in one area, we can then look as a board and acknowledge that and take those dollars to apply it into areas that really need it for the Galaxy. So that is what we did in 2017. And in going into 2018, we acknowledge that we have a good contract, that we have lighting where we're trying to save you energy. We put dimmers in all of the garbage disposal units. We've gone LED in the garage. Dorothy has worked hard with the board to do as much as we can, because at the end of the day, when you turn your light on, you don't care, you want to pay as least amount as possible, because there's no benefit for you. If the light is on, it's on. The least amount that we can get you to pay, that's a positive thing for us. If we can take, and so as your treasurer, what I have tried to do is conservatively reduce your energy, not aggressively use it. And if we look at your March year-to-date financial statements in 2018, you'll see that we're approximately $200,000 over budget. And the reason we're over budget is because we had the coldest months that we've had in 2 years. So I didn't try to rip a Band-Aid off and say, this is the current usage, and every year we're going to use that usage. I tried to give money back to the homeowners in a reasonable manner so that we don't have to have assessments at the end of the year. This year in March, we're $200,000 over in your energy, and April was the coldest April since 1984. So I'm not anticipating a great savings in April, but I'm hoping that we get a couple good months to bring that back. And if we don't get to bring that back, I'm going to manage with the board to say we're over in energy, now we're going to have to try to find savings in other areas, or we're going to have to come to the homeowners and say, for the first time in many years, we may be over budget, but we're going to have to justify the reasons for that and say, this is what we're doing with your money. So believe me, for the 5 years that I've been on the board, I take your money, which is my money, extremely careful. I don't want to overassess everybody. I fight every single year so that the Galaxy and the new buyers come in here, they can say maintenance went down. I don't care if it's 0.25%, I don't care if it's 2%, I don't care if it's 3%. I want the Galaxy to be able to say to realtors, for 6 years in a row, your maintenance has gone down. And the last thing I want to do is overassess anybody in this room, because I'm not an idiot and I'm not going to overassess myself and give that money to the Galaxy. So you can look line by line through that budget and you can pick out areas where I was wrong. And I'm glad to admit that I was wrong, and we had a warmer winter and we had a cooler summer and we had a nice surplus with the energy. And there are going to be other areas where you can come to me and say, why are we over? And I'm more than happy to have any of these discussions with anybody in the room if it's going to be in a respectful manner, and I'm happy to do that. And I am not perfect, but I do, believe me, the one thing I care about is every single dollar that's put in that budget. And if any one of you were in that boardroom, you would see how hard I sit there and fight every single member to beg them to continue to try to keep maintenance either flat or down, unless there's a huge justified reason that's going to benefit this building, that's going to give you the benefit and the building property the benefit, so when new people come, there's going to be a reason for that. So
Okay, Gail, I think you've taken have you said this is not a Gail Hoffman meeting, this is a financial meeting. Gail, this is not the Lincoln Douglas debate, okay? Please.
No, this is.
Okay, anyway, are there any more questions on the financials? Okay, the financial meeting is adjourned. We'll return to the, oh, you do have a, go ahead.
I see the allowance for doubtful accounts.
What? I apologize, I don't mean to interrupt, but there were, on the agenda, we had multiple portions, and the first portion of the meeting was the auditors, and Manche and I, we looked and we set a whole separate PowerPoint to deeper dive into the areas of concern, mainly around bad debt and arrears, R&R, so there's a whole second portion of it.
I'll wait, no problem.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Nick, if you can go to the next slide. So as we saw with the, with the questions we received from the homeowners, there were several themes with the questions, and one of the themes was really geared around bad debts, allowance for doubtful accounts, and R&R. So the next couple slides we put together are kind of deeper dive into those areas of concern for the homeowners. And just in case there's anybody in the room that doesn't know, like, to define the bad debt, we use bad debt, arrears, kind of interchangeably. And basically what it means is we're funding money, we put an expense in the budget line that's going to be applied to pay for money for either homeowners or mall units that aren't paying their maintenance, because the budget is built off expenses, and when we build up these expenses, we say this is how much we're going to need to run the Galaxy properly. And then we kind of determine, because each month the county trues up the bad debt to actuals. They don't just use an accrual or an estimate. They literally look at how many units are in arrears, how many units are not paying, and that's the expense that goes through for the month. So when we build the budget, we base it off, our best guesstimate of what those actuals will be. So that I just want everybody to fully understand what the bad debt and the arrears are. And in 2017, the bad debt expense was $437,775. And the majority, unfortunately, of that, 65.8%, relates to the mall. And
clear up that slide, you cannot read.
So just to give you a little bit of feel, we broke down what built that 437,000, and there's a couple points to it. You have the mall parking, you have the mall abandoned units, which is basically coming from the mall movie theater units, and then you have your residential. And the residential, I'll go into the residential, then we'll go into the mall, because that's kind of the worst story. But for the residential units at year end, there were 34 units in arrears, and the total balance was approximately 150,000. And each month, there could be puts and takes to that number. It doesn't mean, there were 34 units in December, there could have been 40 in January, there could have been 30 in February, whatever it is, the county trues it up. When the board looks at the bad debt, we also have the opportunity when people in arrears are either foreclosed upon, or sales are being short sales come up, or the owner comes to sell, the board has the option, and the board needs to vote on these individually to say, we'll release the lien. And we're going to go into the whole arrears process in an upcoming slide about what processes are in place for people that are in arrears to incentivize them to give the money if they have it, and if they don't have it, some people are just on hard time, and right now they can sell, which is a positive thing for us. But in this instance, if I give you a brief example of just say there's a unit that's in arrears, and we have a lien, but the bank has a lien, the bank would need to foreclose on that unit. And we then, as the Galaxy, would have to work with the bank to say, how much money can we get out of it? We're owed $100,000, but maybe we can only get 20 because the bank has first priority. The board has to make an educated decision on saying, are we willing to take 20 and lose 80, which is going to go into your allowance for doubtful accounts? And it probably already is, but that's where, and the next slide I'll get into allowance for doubtful, but not to complicate it. The bottom line is the board needs to decide, he owes us 100. If we don't release the lien, the new buyer cannot get clean title. If the new buyer cannot get clean title, then that apartment may not be able to sell. If that apartment cannot sell, then we're going to continue to accrue bad debt and get bad debt because they're not paying their maintenance. So the board may forgive that $80,000, take the $20,000 immediate cash, and then release the lien so there's a clean title on the actual apartment. These are tough decisions, and it's very painful, and believe me, it's annoying as a board member. However, what we don't do is we don't release the lien on the individual. We release the lien on the unit so that the unit can sell, and the new homeowner individual so that we can go after that individual later, say they win the lottery, say they get a job. We can still do asset searches and try to go after that money against the individual so they can't just, be a con artist and hide their money. Once their money comes in, we can go and try to seize their assets. So it's a tough decision, but more times than not, the board wants to get that paying individual in and an owner in good standing. One of the questions we had is why aren't we evicting individuals? And unless you own title, to my knowledge, you cannot evict anybody. You have to rely on the bank who's holding the mortgage to then foreclose, and from their point, they have to say they're foreclosing and they have to get that person out. And we're kind of in line with the bank to say, when this thing closes, we want our piece of money. And believe me, we do counter offers, we fight, we go to the realtors and say, if you're getting 6%, can you get 5% and give us that? We fight for every penny that we can, because the realtor has an incentive to make the sale. They're making money, maybe they're willing to give a little piece to us, and we get a little bit more. Everybody makes money, we get an owner in good standing. But as you'll see in the next slide, that allowance for doubtful accounts continues to build from the owners that don't pay until we get a new homeowner pay. So that's the more functionality of the typical event with a regular unit owner. We go to the next slide.
Hi, for those who don't know me, my name is Manji Mai. I work here in the accounting department. I'm going to be presenting the allowance for doubtful accounts. And as of year end 2017, it was approximately $3.8 million. And if you look at this slide, you can see breakdown between the residential unit owners, mall unit owners, both current and past. And 3.8 million is a large number, and it's been accumulating on the books. And Joe Purcell's been talking quite a lot about it, so I'm not going to go into the detail too much. On the bottom, you can see that writing off does not forgive past or current owners, so we still hold a legal lien on these units. And this large $3.8 million number is one of the projects the board wants to look at in the upcoming months to clean it up and reduce it. And again, just because it's off the county books does not mean that it's not collectible. Do the next slide. And this goes into the arrears process, and this is what happens when a unit is late. So you guys all know that first of the month is when your maintenance is due, and if you're late, and there's a 10-day grace period. And if you don't pay your maintenance by the 10th of the month, you're late, and you get a $50 late fee. And we issue a certified late letter as well as through the United States Postal Service. And if you're late again another month, we send another late fee, and you get an 8% annual interest on the balance that's accumulating. And this late letter that you get the second time tells you your services will be suspended. That includes packaging, spa privileges, parking privileges. So what that means is we're going to try to do whatever we can to encourage these people to pay, or else we suspend their privileges. And continuing on to this, what they do not pay after a second late letter, we send them to legal. That's when we start issuing collection notices, and we do whatever we can. We put liens on these units, whatever we can to get this balance back. I also want to input that as the accounting department, what we try to do is, on the bottom here, is do payment plans. So if there's a unit owner who receives a late letter, it tells them that, hey, we understand maybe you're in a difficult situation, but if you work with us, we can help pay it. And if they paid less than 6 months the balance, then they don't have to have board approval. But if they say, hi, I have a balance of $10,000, I'd like to pay it over approximately a year, we have to talk to the board to see if they will approve it or not. Because then things get fishy, they can say, oh, I'll pay it in a year, then who knows what's going to happen. So we try our best to reduce this bad debt and reduce the allowance for doubtful accounts. You can do the next slide. And I'm going to pass it. Oh, you have a question?
One last thing I wanted to mention that this accounting group has taken a priority to is, as Mache mentioned, getting those collection letters out early. They're more aggressive against the early offenders before it triggers that point of no return. Because once it gets to a certain point, the owners don't have the money. And unfortunately for us, one of the first things they're not paying is their maintenance. They're going to pay their taxes, they're going to pay their mortgage, they're going to pay things that hurt them more than their maintenance. It appears to me, at least based on cases that we've seen, that the first thing that's easiest to go is your maintenance because it hurts them the least. So they've been aggressive with making phone calls, putting out letters, and working very closely with our legal firm on liens and getting liens and trying to get that top priority, that if this thing does fall from something that they can actually pay and turn into a payment plan versus something that balloons into something bigger, we get the top priority. The other thing that Richard and I, since he's become president, have been talking a lot about lately are different structures of aggressive ways that we can go after, unit owners. And two at the top, we've talked about factoring and looking at that big number in the arrears of, seeing if we could just sell off the debt and turn it into some cash immediately, and or looking at the current structure where maybe we get a collection agency in to lead the fight, and if they go through and the collection agency says there's nothing there, they're only getting paid if they find it. So that's definitely going to help us weed out, who has something to give and who doesn't, and we can spend our time aggressively against the people that have versus have not and are just on a hard time. So I just wanted to point that out because I think it's very important that they stay on top of the early ones, because there is that fine line between what's 1,000 to all of a sudden balloons into 20, 30, and then you kind of hit that point where, God, we're happy to get 50%. So that, I just did want to point that out because that's been one of our major priorities. And over the last couple of years, it has come down, the numbers have come down. I mean, the economy's better, the maintenance is like low. So I think it all kind of plays into it, but that, all those pieces kind of we look at it as a big picture, not one event, because everything touches the other. Yeah, we'll continue the R&R. We'll have questions at the end for everybody, that has any questions. We're definitely going to have a Q&A, session at the end of this so that you can. And I just wanted to point out that, some of the questions that came in also related to the R&R. And on the next slide, I'm going to kind of talk to the process so you kind of can get in the head of the board members and what they have to do when they're considering R&R projects and how to spend their money the smartest way with the most bang for your buck. But one of the, on page 12 of the audited financial statements, we have a summary of what the estimated future R&R. And it's a little bit of a complicated schedule, but basically the first column is kind of telling you if we had to replace everything today, how much would we have to spend? And the estimate on that bucket is about $50.4 million. Those, he's pulling up the page just so you can kind of see it. It's page 12. So in that first bucket where you're seeing the $50.4 million, it's bucketed into very high level kind of categories, but ultimately that's saying there's about $50.4 million of common area capital projects that could be done within the galaxy. And again, that 50.4 isn't looking, when you're seeing in the second column where it says interior 1 to 25, exterior 1 to 19, that's not saying we're in year 5 of 25. We're saying if every single product needs to be replaced today, we would have to have about $50.5 million. And that's based on what the board has is what we've developed is currently is a cash flow document where the board can see all the current projects we want to do, the projects that we've done. So if there's more recent information from engineers or things that we've paid for, it's on there, and there's a tab that's called quote complete. So we know that's been completed, we know what year it was, we know who the vendor was. So we can say that was a good project, this was a good vendor. But this, I just want to be very clear that this number is basically saying if everything today went bad, we'd need $50.4 million. The second column, the third, 1, 2, 3, the fourth column that says replacement fund balance in 2017, that's saying that's your cash on hand after all accounts payable is paid, everything is paid. We have about $3.8 million in cash that we could apply towards those areas. And the fourth column is saying in 2018, we're assessing you $3 million for the R&R fund, and there's about $3 million that you can apply. So you're basically saying you have about $6.8 million to spend through 2018 if you spend every single penny on the R&R. And we kind of bucket it, looking interior, exterior, but I want, one of the questions that we had related to waterproofing, and in the 2016 financials, we had about 1.2, just over $1 million, and in this year we have nothing. So one of the things that when we estimated that number, the board was working on the drains in the driveway. They were talking about redoing the entire driveway, and they were talking about redoing the sealing of the berm. What ended up happening was only the drains. And below the line, you'll see garage, driveway, the 235, 419. That was spent on the drains in the driveway, and that was what was dealt in the waterproofing. And the reason the board moved forward with that was because of the litigation with the mall, and the leaks were going crazy through the mall. So the board had their fiduciary responsibility to act on the main leaks that were going on in the mall. So rather than do the whole driveway, we know that there's been problems in the past with the drains. At that point in time, the board was talking about, let's just do the drains, give it a year, come back and visit it and make sure the drains are done properly, and some of these leaks have been, subsided so that the mall isn't getting beaten down with all these leaks. We knew there were other leaks. There's multiple levels to this, but just to answer that question, these numbers are pure estimates that you're seeing in the two rightmost columns for 2017 and 2018. They're kind of saying this is really where, 17 is kind of where we spent directionally, and 2018 is saying what we would apply the remaining cash. I apologize. In the 2017 is saying if we have the 3.7, this is our estimate of where we're going to spend it. And in 2018, this is estimate of where we're going to spend it. And this goes right into the next question. Historically, the board had kind of given a budget, and when they gave the budget, they provided case by case exactly what projects they planned on doing. And this is what we're assessing you for the R&R, and these are the exact dollars to the projects that we're doing. Since I've been on the board, I've tried to go away from that and try to find a number that was reasonable for the homeowners that are here this year. And this is my opinion, and I'll be curious to see how the new board members and the current board feel. Every year it's a different case, but we came up with about $3 million for the past couple of years, saying with the demographics and what happened with the foreclosures and the arrears that we kind of captured this, we came up with somewhat of a sweet spot of about $3 million for the R&R. It's been consistent for the past several years. And in my opinion, that's a fair number for everybody that lives here this year to pay in to the projects. We know we have way more than $3 million worth of work to do, and the board has the right to say we're going to assess you $5 million, $6 million. And me as treasurer, and this is only, I have one vote, and I have set into the budget, and I have everybody on the board has opportunity to talk to this. But to me, to say, if you're living here this year, and you're funding $3 million worth of capital projects, that's fair. If you're going to fund $5 million, $5 million, and then in 2 years it drops to 3, well then you funded all these things for people that bought 3 years from now. It's my methodology. You can agree, you can disagree. I'm just being upfront with you of what my methodology is. I just think it's fair for people. It's a sweet spot that if people that bought apartments for $200,000 that don't make a lot of money, there's a balance, and then the board is going to have to figure this out. What is the fine balance between increasing the R&R and carrying these versus putting people into arrears but getting a lot done? And it appears Richard wants to add in, so feel free.
Joe and I have had very lively discussions in the past as well as now, and I love working with him because we really talk about, between the both of us, there's not one side of this problem that we don't hit. Joe's major concern is to make sure that the maintenance remains affordable for the people that are here. This is not the Galaxy of 20 years ago. A lot of people are on fixed incomes. We have a totally different demographic. And Joe, as always, when he talks about the sweet spot, his concern is to make sure that we're affordable and that we don't throw people into a downside spiral because of the debt service. I'm a businessman, and you can't fight Mother Nature. And Mother Nature in my business is mathematics and metrics and analytics. Meaning, what do the numbers say? 1 and 1 or 2. No matter if you want it to be 3, it's not going to be 3. Whether we pay now or whether we pay later, the Galaxy has a major challenge. So Joe and I are sitting down between the both of us, and we're looking at very esoteric structures, meaning there are ways in business of handling big problems by looking at what are the big, the outliers that we call them, that have the greatest stresses in our economics. We have the garage. That's $1 million a year, okay? But we also have a failing, our biggest challenge right now is our plumbing system. The risers are, and the branching are so brittle that I had this lovely couple here who, I've known forever, telling me that the Galaxy has come up with a policy of not unclogging drains. And one of the reasons is that every time we go into a drain, the metal breaks. It's so brittle. And now we end up with not a clog, but a leak or a major replacement. Who pays for that? You guys, okay? So it's not easy. It's not easy. But I can tell you honestly, working with Joe has been a pleasure. We really balance each other out between a conservative, very conservative, pro, keep the maintenance down, and forcing the dialogue into how can we be creative? How do we create creative business structures? Which is my end of the deal. And he understands that we laugh a lot. One thing we're not going to do is we're not going to kill you with crazy assessments. We're going to find a way to get through this. We really are. And we have a great board that works together. Everybody is working on this. But ladies and gentlemen, our biggest challenge is a failing infrastructure. No doubt about it. And our biggest challenge right now, in my estimation, is the plumbing system. That being said, we have a strategic plan that's going to be underway. We're going to be bringing in a group to do a capital needs assessment that's going to be part of, there's 2 ends to this. One is the capital needs assessment, which is going to be a short-term and long-term assessment of the risk associated with our various infrastructure elements. And then the other thing is, in terms of our maintenance, we have the capacity to have a work order system that will give us both routine work orders, but more importantly, preventive maintenance. There has not been preventive maintenance in the Galaxy since it was started, okay? For the first time, we have a system called Building Link, which I hope you all, the board is going to be, we've all volunteered to learn how to use it. Believe me, I'm 60, going to be 66.
That's not true.
Okay, they were volunteered. But honestly, you got to learn how to use that system, because that's going to give you ability to immediately get a work order for us to monitor when the work order went in. And also to monitor how long it took and whether our people are doing the right job. So, and also, we're looking to go to national standards that define what the expectation for a multifamily housing asset are in order to maintain it properly. There are actually government standards that apply to multifamily housing that says you have to do preventive maintenance on this, on that, on this, and the work has to be done in a certain way. We have not had any standards whatsoever no checklist, nothing in this place on how to do anything and what has to be done. It's all by who's complaining. We are totally reactive, but this board is working towards being proactive. That being said, if we don't do these things, you know, there's going to be a number that's going to come out on what we have to do, but this board is committed to make it as painless as possible. So that's where we are with R&R. Yes?
Just a quick question. Talking about paintballs, is the board looking into Galaxy hiring our own licensed plumber and our own licensed?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. We're looking at becoming a 21st century operation here, run by business standards. Business standards dictate that at this point in time, with a modern building, that with the kind of problems, with the age of the building, that we have plumbers, electricians, licensed plumbers, master mechanics. You know, there are people that have to have 4 trades in order to become a master mechanic, and they can do almost anything. But we have to have trained people here, not people that just look at something. And we have to have people, you know, we have to have the right equipment. Has anybody seen the garage cleaned in 40 years? You know, well, why don't we have a street cleaner? You know, this place has been going down the drain for a long time. But this board is aware of it. By saying it, I'm aware of it, Joe's aware of it, and God willing, I have faith, and there is hope. Don't give up. You know, we're going to make it happen. You know, and you're going to see results. I promise you.
So just to wrap up on the R&R, we have a second slide, but in the same schedule, I'm sorry, can we go back to the last? In the same schedule, you can't go back to the PowerPoint, I apologize. In the audited financials as well as this file, we show what we spent this year. Over the past couple of years, we haven't been spending the full $3 million. But this year, between the hallways and the boilers, you know, we have an overspend. The difference for those, just to be understanding for the people that don't fully understand, the operating fund, you have to meet your budget. If you go over budget, there's an assessment. If you go under budget, there's a surplus, and the board has to determine what to do with that surplus. On the R&R, you're allowed to build a reserve, so you can technically collect money from owners that you didn't spend in the current year and apply it towards future projects, or for lack of a better word, save it for a rainy day so when an emergency comes, there are no special assessments, but you have the money to do there. What we've been trying to do over the past couple of years, knowing the hallways were coming, knowing the boilers were coming, we have been collecting money, put it in the reserve, so that this year we collected $3 million, but we ended up spending 5.4. There were no special assessments for the additional money because we actually had it in savings. So that, you know, that's kind of juggling the timing of the projects, knowing what you have, and again, that's what that cash flow document is for. If we go on to the next slide, and you know, this again is based on questions. I just wanted to give people a little bit of an insight on what it's like sitting in the boardroom, and when you have the R&R projects, there's so many things that have to happen at the Galaxy. There's so many priorities, and there's 9 different people and 9 different personalities, and we all have to kind of decide and come to a conclusion on how we're going to spend the money. So I just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of a walk as to how those decisions happen. And obviously the first step is just board discussions. We have, you know, the general manager, Dorothy, comes in and tells us, you know, gives us a heads up of what's going on, what's the emergency, what are the priorities, and then we're going to review the monthly financial statements to understand, well, how much money do we have for these? Where, you know, board members, all the new board members and previous board members had the opportunity to walk the property with the general manager and with the facilities director to kind of let them see, hey, when we're talking about these things, visualize it, see how old the stuff is, see what it looks like, and you can kind of put a picture to what we're actually talking about. So maybe we're not all electricians or engineers, but at least we're educated on a layman term, and some of us are actually experts in these areas. You know, we rely on our expertise, of each person's expertise, to educate the other board members. But we do walk the property, we do try to get educated, and then, you know, again, Dorothy's going to bring us, hey, there's emergencies, there's unplanned things, which again is why you try to keep a little bit of a reserve balance in there and, collect money from the homeowners so that, God forbid, something really goes bad, and it has to get done, it would be a special assessment. The next step, the board tries to prioritize things. And this board, since over the past, since the new board and lately even the prior board, we've tried to bucket what we're calling life safety inspections and fines from a state perspective versus curb appeal, because we try to balance them all so that we can get the best bang for our buck. Obviously, life safety is most important. If anybody, God forbid, gets hurt, it's litigation, and we don't want to see anybody get hurt, but there are also other expenses that come with that. And we have what I'm calling this cash flow analysis, where we see, this is basically the document in the most simplistic form is saying, this is where we currently are with our cash position. This is what we're committed to spend, that the board has already voted, you've seen it in an open session. This money's going out the door, but it hasn't really gone out yet because we haven't been invoiced and paid. So this is your balance that you have to spend. And that's what that cash flow does. And we bucket it into sections: high priority, middle priority, low priority. And the board has to walk through that, and for lack of a better word, we kind of rank them. And by that ranking system, it kind of takes some of the emotion out of it and say, if it's life safety, again, the board can vote however they want. Maybe life safety to me is a 5, somebody else is a 3, depending on the specific project. But if you kind of rank it, it takes a little bit of the emotion out of it. And you can see which is the highest rank for that cash flow doc. And once the board says, yes, this is what we're going for, we move it up to the top, and that kind of deducts the cash out. So you understand if we commit to this, this is the cash balance you're going to have left to play with for all these other items that the board needs to do that are below the line. So it's a simple document in my opinion, but it's very user-friendly and very easy to manipulate, and it just allows the board to see what the cash position is going to be. And if you commit to this huge project, you're not going to be able to do everything. And I tried to stress to the board, in my opinion, there's two pieces. There's cash. We can always assess you guys whatever we want, but there's also bandwidth in what management can handle. So you got to kind of balance it, as well as you wanting to live in a construction zone. And I know the driveway, the internal garage has been horrible for some people, but if we're doing the driveway, we're doing the hallways, we're doing the boilers, we're doing the driveway up front on the burn, around the burn, there's a lot of inconvenience to homeowners. So the board does try to balance all that together in one specific way. So after we kind of prioritize it, we move on to our due diligence, and that's where we're going to task the general manager. Let's get the engineers in if it's applicable to that case. Let's meet with the engineer if applicable, or talk to Dorothy and really dig on her and make sure that everybody's asking the right questions, so that a lot of people say in the history of the galaxy everything's been done wrong. We've done it over and over. So the boards that I've been on, since I've been on, truly have questioned the general manager. They question. Everybody has best efforts here to do the right thing. Nobody wants to do this over and over. And we do, and sometimes projects are scrapped because a board member comes up with something that comes out of left field but makes a lot of sense. And, so we have those conversations. Then, based on those conversations, we're going to get an RFP together, which is basically a document that's going to go out to the vendors saying these are the specific plans that you have to adhere to if you're going to bid on this project, so that everybody that gives a bid to the board is comparing apples to apples, so that when we open those bids, we understand company A, B, C, and D are all bidding on the same thing. So that company A, if they miss one or two pieces, may come in cheaper, but we have to do our due diligence to make sure that they're adhering to everything we want, because that could be a mistake that we say, oh, they're the low bidder, this looks great, and then after the fact, we realize, wait a minute, they didn't say this. So those conversations happen, and from there, we decide to execute, and that's when the RFPs come out, we have the deadlines. Sealed bids come into the board. I think it's important for people to understand that. The bids aren't open unless there's minimally 2 board members in the room, so that there's, you have that level of security to know that at least 2 board members physically saw these envelopes open. if the envelopes are open for whatever reason, that bid should be scrapped, and it could ruin the whole bid process. You may have to start from scratch again. And again, then the board selects the winning firm, and it isn't always necessarily the lowest bidder. More times than not it is, but there may be reasons within the specific range that the board may decide not to go with the lowest bidder. The government, from my understanding, has to go with the lowest bidder. The Galaxy is not obligated to go with the lowest bidder, but they can. But if there are specific reasons why we think firm B, if it was close, was a little bit more, but there's a justification for why we should go with them, the board has the option. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of an insight, and this is partially to answer the question why we keep that extra money on the side, because there's always emergencies. We don't tag every single project, because I don't want to pigeonhole the board into committing to these, to then have to say to you, we said we were going to do A, B, C, and D, and guess what? We did A, but now we're doing B, C, and D. Every month, if you get the monthly financials, you can go in and to the penny, they're going to say exactly what was spent and what specific projects are done. Accounting and I are working together to tweak that schedule just a little bit. It's coming up in the next couple months. I'm not going to say exactly what month, but we're working to it so that in the future you're going to see whatever projects were done, you're going to see the project, you're going to see a column that is the contract price, you're going to see the expense that was done in prior years, you're going to see expense that's done in the current year, and you're going to see a to-go column. So you'll get the full picture. Right now, it kind of just tells you how much is, kind of spent this year. But I don't think you see the full picture. So that little bit of a tweak that we do will let you see if the hallways were on it and it's 3.2 million, first column you're going to see 3.2 million. If we're in 2018 and 2017, if 3 million was spent on it, you'd see prior year 3 million, current year 2 million, balance to go would be 0, and then in 2019 the hallways would fall off the schedule, and you'll only have projects on the schedule that dollars are actually happening in the current year, or if there were prior year for whatever reason there's a to-go, those to-goes will be until the board decides to complete that project. So we think that'll be a little more transparent and easier to read. And again, accounting and I are working on getting that updated. That's the way we kind of look at it in the cash flow. So it's more just shifting that over into your monthly report to give you the big picture. It'll be very easy for homeowners to say, well, wait a minute, how much did this project cost? You'll see it right in the contract total that the board committed to. And if we go to that's kind of it with the R&R. The next slide, which I talked about a little bit earlier, and I'll be trying to be brief. I know we're running long tonight. There's been a lot of questions about maintenance, I've been telling homeowners maintenance has been reduced, but the residential line has been increased. So what I did in this slide is just took a sample of a 1546 square foot apartment and annualized the monthly maintenance for 2017 versus 2018. And it is accurate to say that the residential line did go up by $212, which is 4.7%. That line is basically driven by maintenance ops, it's for plumbers, preventative maintenance. It was also by the outsource, our outsourced services, which is, we put increases in for security, we put increases for the concierge and for the cleaning crew, which was offset by that savings in accounting that was mentioned earlier. But the residential line is the bulk of your budget, and that line was increased. But when you look at your total maintenance line, your base energy has been reduced by about 7.4%. And again, this is based on a 1546 square apartment. So I say you have to look at the whole picture. You can't just take a snapshot of one line. I look at the budget as a whole. And in that line, we actually reduced what we're assessing by 7.4%. And that is just, that was based on me working with accounting, looking at user run rates, looking at, again, as I mentioned earlier, not being overly aggressive in case we're due for a cold winter, we're due for a hot summer, but yet we're going to get savings on with the new boilers. We're going to get savings with the garage lighting and the hallway lighting. And again, it is a concern for me. We're looking at the usage year to date to kind of get a feel for where we are, because we are over budget. And this is why I am conservative with with the assessments. We don't want to just rip it off like a Band-Aid and say, this year we were this, and next year we're always going to continue. But then if you look at your general common, that's also down by 2%. That was driven by bad debt. We feel that that line, again, they budget that to actuals, not based on accruals. So looking at the actuals and the trend and looking at accounting is very, very close to the foreclosures and how they're doing and how active banks are with coming in and trying to turn over those units. And right now, they have been aggressive because with the hallways being done, people do actually want to buy here. So it is a very good time to try to clean some of these up. And then you have your water sewage, which actually went up a little bit. And your R&R fund is flat, which is what I mentioned earlier. We've been keeping it flat to the $3 million for the past several years. So when you look at your big picture, yes, the residential line is up. I'm giving you what your drivers are of what caused that to go up. And in my opinion, this is a very good story because you're actually getting the biggest reduction is on your energy, which is what you want to see. It's on your second reduction is on your bad debt, which is what you want to see. And your increase is really on the preventative maintenance, which was what Mr. Vasquez spoke to a little bit earlier. And, when we built this budget, we did try to say, I wanted to try to keep this budget either flat or slightly down. And when we looked at it, we said, we're getting some bang for our buck in the energy. We're getting some bang for our buck. Let's make a compromise and put some more money towards the preventative maintenance and towards some of the plumbing and where we're seeing the issues, and that was a compromise that this board made. So yes, you are seeing that money there, but I think as a homeowner, at least for myself, that's where I want to see that money going. I want to see it into the property. I don't want to see it, if we can get reductions in energy and bad debt, that's a good thing. If we can get it, and allocate that money, but still keep maintenance basically relatively flat, because what I'm seeing is a $69 reduction. So, again, it's nothing major, but in today's economy, if it's not going up, and even if it's slightly down, you can still say it's going down. So I just wanted to put that slide in there because that's been out there and mentioned. So I just want to tell people, look at the big picture. Again, feel free to reach out to Richard, myself, anybody. I'm happy to talk with people and, talk through this stuff and again, look at the big picture and give you my opinion. But that really ends our presentation tonight. If we want to go to, if there are any additional questions, we can go on to the Q&A at this point.
Okay, are there any questions on the R&R? Yes.
Just curious about owners in arrears. Are they able to rent their units and enjoy that benefit? Or is there something we can do to stipulate that they're not able to rent their units until they, or renew their leases until they pay their arrears off?
I'll let Joe take that, but I could tell you that New Jersey is one of the most onerous states in terms of going after owners that are on arrears. They're incredibly protected under law, a lot more than New York. So I'm going to hand that over to Joe.
I agree with Richard. It's very challenging, to say the least, to do anything against people that live here that are in arrears. However, they do have to submit. My understanding is they have to submit a report to be able to rent, and we would deny that request if I'm correct, if you believe I'm correct in saying we would deny the request for somebody to rent that's in arrears. However, we cannot prevent them from getting money under the table and just having somebody come in here. But that may go back to, us getting controls in place for the front desk, just questioning and knowing the owners. It looks like Richard Miller has his hand up, so maybe he wants to.
I think this is where it applies. We get the owner to sign over to us the rent.
Correct.
They have to sign that.
He's correct, thank you.
I noticed that there's a sewer lift station upgrade in the R&R expenditures. Now, I'm aware, and maybe some people aren't, that we pump our sewage up from the basement of Tower 3 to Boulevard East, where it then flows down to the water treatment plant. Is there anything we can do now that some years have passed so that we can pump our sewage directly?
Yeah, I'll let Dorothy answer. We definitely are working with the town, but Dorothy, you're comfortable here.
So the sewage lift update, we recently replaced 2 pumps that were not working. Out of 3 pumps, only 1 worked. The major project we're currently working with the town, the engineers, DEP, EPA, and we're very close of establishing which netting chamber on River Road. We will be able to connect both stormwater and sewage, which will alleviate the issue of pumping everything up, and also will solve other, not just problems, but the town's problem at this time. So within the next 60 to 90 days, we should have more details on what's going to happen and some timelines.
Any more questions? Please.
Not on R&R, but on your bad debt, when people do a payout, if somebody pays like past the 10 days, there's a $50 charge. So if somebody sets up a payout with you, is there the $50 charge?
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we negotiate on a case by case. Because as an initial late fee, I don't know if we forgive the initial, but going forward, if they're only paying a partial, they're considered technically in good standing, but the second they miss a payment, there is no 30-day, 60-day window. It's immediately everything shut down and you're considered where you were prior to the agreement being put in place.
Okay, so the other part of this question, we have our basic maintenance each month, but somebody might have a parking charge, guest parking charge, or a spa charge, or a fine that they dispute, and they pay the rest of their maintenance except for that $7 fee, that $25 parking fee. They write that they're disputing it, or the garage speeding tickets that we have about 40 people disputing it right now. So if they pay the rest of their maintenance, but they haven't paid the disputed amount, and they've said I'm disputing this amount, are they charged the late fee?
I don't believe they're charged a late fee if it's in dispute. If it's in late fee, and then it would go to coverage ultimately if they're disputing it. And correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is they're not charged a late fee while it's in dispute, but if they lose the dispute, then would they be charged a late fee?
So they would go to covenants, and the problem, I'm seeing from my own perspective here is that very few units per month actually get heard by covenants. So there are several, like you said, speeding violations over 40, and 3 of them each month. But again, we looked at, but the other 37 are still on the books, and we can't assess late fees on those while they're still with covenants. So that's pretty much what's going on. And I would love to see if the companies can, like, the committee can speed up the process or see more speeding violations.
And just to be clear, the board is working on getting everything back up and running so these cases can flow through. But I'll confirm with Marissa tomorrow and see if you're okay, if she emails you, or maybe if we can, I don't know how to distribute this to all owners so everybody's understanding the question. But my basic understanding of this is once you're in dispute, all late fees, everything else is off until that.
You are
final
correct. That has been the
determination.
policy since we became a condominium. Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, my name is Leon East. I've been here for 34 years. I had a parking space on the 8th floor. Nick or whatever, his last name was Shafford, made me move, took my spot, and made me move 15 feet. Now, that doesn't make any sense. Now, I'm not disabled, but I have problems getting around. Where I was very comfortable with 15 feet from where I was. Now, you tell me what difference does that make? For years, I've had a reserved spot. Why is it now that he should tell me where I have to park my car for no reason at all?
Nick,
Okay, that's really a management question, because it's a parking spot. We're not dealing with parking issues in the speeding. but if you wish, after this meeting, we'll take your case in particular, and we'll look into the details and try to help you out if we can, okay?
Is it possible to get to the bottom of the mall situation, and that all you're sitting down and negotiating will mean nothing if the Galaxy Mall is being taken as a tax loss for a larger conglomerate?
I don't know.
Okay, I'll take this one, okay? We're in negotiations with the mall, and the Wendy issue, I'll call it, is an issue, okay? Because, you know, she has a big chunk of the mall, and it's been run to its death. The mall is dead. I can tell you, as a businessman, it has, it's the financial stresses on the asset, the condition of its infrastructure, its initial business plan are all failing. Malls don't work anymore, so it's not really a working mall. Getting a retail operation in there, there's not enough traffic, and the environment is internet-based. So it has to be repurposed. It has to be fixed. And the present ownership can't do it. Now, if there is a negotiating strategy, but I can't discuss it right now, but I can guarantee you that, not I, but we as a board, okay? We as a board have come up with a series of strategic positions on a number of business issues. And as a board, our position is that we can't allow the mall to fail. We must ensure its future growth. So the Wendy issue will be addressed as part of our negotiating position. There are other major business issues, major cost centers that are lows on our long-term survival, that in terms of our long-term liabilities, are threats to our solvency. You can't maintain failing assets or failing structures and hope that you can maintain a stable maintenance. Either you come up with a solution towards these loads, or you increase maintenance. We don't have our board wants to maintain a stable maintenance. We've made that clear. So our view is to to be creative, and we think that given time, we'll disclose those issues to all once they're formulated. We definitely need a capital needs assessment. We can't wander in the dark anymore. We have to know how serious the plumbing structure is, what the price points are associated with some of these big ticket items. But that's being done, and within the next 3-4 months, 5 months, we'll get some numbers and we'll take it from there. Any more questions? Okay, I want to say something. Thank you all for being here. We as a board, we can't do it alone. And we've come together to work together to come to a common cause, and that's to do the best we can to make the Galaxy better. And we are taking the bull by the horns. We're grappling with serious issues. The Galaxy is getting old. There are major structures here that need to be addressed. Now, is it impossible? No. We can make it happen. There's a lot here that can be done creatively, and we're going to find ways. But I'll tell you something from my position. I've never worked with a better group of people ever in my career as a board. So thank you. And listen, we're your neighbors. Before we're board members, we're your neighbors. And we have this program, Neighbor to Neighbor. Give us a call. We've been trying to respond to every email that's sent to us. We may not always agree. Sometimes we even disagree. But we're responding as honestly as we can. Okay, and we're reaching out to you. And we're so glad you're here. again, this is a good group and we do care, okay? So thanks for coming to the financial presentation. There'll be a short recess and then we're going to have our board meeting. Thank you.